What if I told you that everything you know about old age and death is a grand deception? A cruel yet perfectly tuned program launched in the depths of your own brain. And the most incredible thing is that glitches occur in this program. Glitches that grant people not just a long life, but an almost infinite one. Do you believe in the existence of a person celebrating their 200th or even 300th birthday? It sounds like cheap science fiction, but it was exactly this assumption, bordering on heresy, that was once put forward not by a science fiction writer, but by a world-renowned scientist, academician, and neurophysiologist, Natalia Petrovna Bekhtereva. She, who dedicated her entire life to studying the most complex object in the universe, the human brain, at some point dared to declare, "Our departure from this world is not a natural process of wear and tear. It is the cold-blooded execution of a sentence passed by nature itself." Somewhere in the secret labyrinths of our consciousness lies a ruthless matrix of life and death, which at a certain moment simply presses the stop button. But what if this button could be blocked? We are used to considering 120 or even 150 years lived as a record. Such cases are rare. They capture the imagination and force scientists to look for the elixir of eternal youth in genes, nutrition, or lifestyle. But Bekhtereva went further. She asked a question that made the scientific community freeze in numbness. What if official records are just the tip of the iceberg? What if the real long-livers, those she called supercentenarians, never make it into the Guinness Book of Records, because their existence breaks all the laws of biology known to us? According to her theory, super longevity is not a gift from the gods and not the result of a righteous life. It is just an error, a glitch in the program. An amazing and lucky glitch, thanks to which the next stage of the matrix, leading to fading, simply does not turn on. Imagine a computer that was supposed to shut down after completing a task, but due to a system error, continues to work forever. Natalia Bekhtereva assumed that this is exactly what happens to some people. Their biological clock does not just slow down, it breaks, freezing at the mark of life. This was only the first, but the most stunning statement that completely overturned the view on the very essence of human existence. And no one even guessed what evidence she was ready to present. Where could such a bold, such a daring idea even be born? Natalia Bekhtereva found the answer to this question not in sterile laboratories, not under the light of microscopes, and not in the readings of complex instruments. She discovered the key to the greatest mystery of human life by observing the most ordinary, poetic, and sad phenomenon, autumn leaf fall. Each of us has seen this thousands of times. But have you ever wondered why exactly leaves fall from trees? It would seem the answer lies on the surface. Autumn brings cold, the leaves freeze, becoming fragile and vulnerable. Wind and snow mercilessly tear them from the branches, covering the ground with a golden carpet. But this is just a beautiful fairy tale for those who do not wish to know the cruel truth. Natalia Petrovna noticed something that others did not pay attention to. The leaf does not simply die from bad weather. The tree itself systematically and cold-bloodedly rejects it. It is precisely in autumn, in that very place where the leaf stem attaches to the branch, that a special cork layer begins to form, a small, barely noticeable growth that, like a ruthless executioner, does its job. Day after day it grows, cutting off the flows of life-giving juices, cutting the leaf off from the source of life. It literally pushes it off the branch, dooming it to an inevitable departure. The tree sacrifices a part of itself to survive the winter and give new life in the spring. But this new life will also be doomed in advance to an autumn execution. And this is where a shocking insight pierced Bekhtereva. Something terrifyingly similar happens to a human being. We come into this world, take our first breath, make our first step, pronounce our first word. We experience our first love, create families, give birth to children, fulfilling our biological function prescribed by nature. But as soon as this function is fulfilled, an invisible mechanism inside us launches that very merciless program. A human, like an autumn leaf, becomes open and defenseless before any bad weather. This program, as Bekhtereva claimed, does not even bother to strike one precise blow. Why? It simply removes all protection from us. It gives to all the winds an individual who is no longer needed, who no longer represents value for the continuation of the species. And nature, as the academicians cynically noted, has a huge arsenal of weapons, thousands of diseases, viruses, and ailments that are just waiting for their hour to pounce on a defenseless organism. We do not just age, we are purposefully prepared for disposal. But if this is a program, then it must be stored somewhere, and it must have its own control center, its own black box. It was this that Bekhtereva had to discover in the labyrinths of our brain. So, if our departure is the result of a certain program, where is it located and what is its mechanism? Natalia Bekhtereva, relying on decades of research into the depths of the human brain, put forward a theory that today sounds like science fiction. She assumed that in the subcortical structures, in the most ancient and least studied parts of the brain, that very program matrix is embedded. This is not some specific organ that can be seen on an MRI scan. It is a complex multi-level control system, the supreme conductor of our existence, controlling absolutely all vital functions of the body. According to her hypothesis, this matrix consists of a whole series of sequential links. Bekhtereva called them conductor links. Imagine a huge orchestra where your whole life is one long symphony. Each conductor link is responsible for its own part. One controls infancy, another, the turbulent period of growing up, the third, maturity, and the peak of physical capabilities. They replace each other in a strict, unbreakable sequence, and here is the scariest part. In Bekhtereva's opinion, one link yields its place to the next without even exhausting its capabilities. Just think about this terrifying fact. The program responsible for our youth and strength leaves the stage not because its resources have run out, but simply because the time has come. It is replaced by the next conductor, whose task is to launch the mechanisms of fading. We are forcibly transferred to the aging mode, although the potential of the previous stage could have worked for many more years. This is the main proof of the program's existence. Our organism is capable of much more, but it is simply not allowed. It is led along a pre-written script, the finale of which is total decay. It is in this mechanism that the secret of supercentenarians lies. In these people, as the academician believed, at a certain stage of life, that very saving glitch in the matrix occurs. The scheduled change of conductors does not happen. The link responsible for maturity, for some reason, forgets to leave and pass the baton to the link responsible for old age. The program freezes and the person continues to live, functioning within the framework of the previous, more resourceful stage. Their body does not receive the order for self-destruction. Therefore, Bekhtereva declared, science needs to look not for a mythical immortality gene, but precisely for those factors that cause this blessed error in the code. Can this glitch be provoked? Is a person capable, by force of will or mind, of hacking their internal matrix? This question ceased to be theoretical for Natalia Petrovna on the day the death program came for her. Theories, even the most brilliant ones, remain only theories until they receive their irrefutable proof. And fate, as if deciding to test Natalia Bekhtereva for strength, provided her with the cruelest and most vivid material for research, her own body. In her 79th year of life, the system failed. but not that saving glitch she spoke of. On the contrary, the fading program, that very ruthless conductor responsible for the finale of the Life Symphony, struck its blow. The diagnosis sounded like a verdict: stroke. The mechanism she had studied from the outside for so long was launched with merciless precision inside her own brain. For any other person at her age, this would mean the end of active life. Months, or even years, spent under the supervision of doctors, strict restrictions, complete rest, and slow fading. The medics, having done everything possible, delivered their verdict: observe rest, do not overload yourself, accept the new reality. They saw before them an elderly patient whose brain had suffered heavy damage. But they did not know one thing. Natalia Petrovna regarded what happened not as an illness, but as a declaration of war. It was her personal mortal combat with that very matrix she swore to unravel. And she was not going to give up. Instead of obediently lying in bed and immersing herself in the prescribed rest, Bekhtereva did the unthinkable. She began to work like never before, giving herself not a single indulgence. She sat down to write a new book. For the doctors, this was madness, a dangerous experiment that could lead to fatal consequences. But for her, it was the only possible method of treatment. She was not just experimenting on herself. She was conducting aimed fire at the enemy. Every paragraph written, every formulated thought was not just text. It was an effort forcing her brain to build new neural pathways, bypassing the damaged areas, literally paving bypass roads around the ruins left by the program. Several months passed. The time came for a repeat MRI. The doctors were preparing to see a bleak picture: extensive zones of necrosis, irreversible consequences of the strike, but what they saw on the scans plunged them into a state of shock. This simply could not be. The results did not just show improvement. They demonstrated a fantastic recovery of brain functions. The organism did not just survive, it regenerated at incredible speed. The only person in the room who was not surprised was Natalia Petrovna herself. She did not consider it a miracle. She knew it was a logical result. She forced her brain to work at the limit of creative possibilities and thereby manually rewrote the damaged section of the code. In this duel of reason and biological program, reason won a crushing victory, and this victory allowed her to formulate two main rules for those who want to live not just a long, but a high-quality and meaningful life. So, the personal victory over a deadly ailment became for Natalia Bekhtereva the key to the solution. She did not just survive. She proved in practice that one can and must fight the aging program. Based on this experience, she formulated the first rule, the first practical weapon available to each of us. It sounds a bit scientific: compensate for brain underloading. What is hidden behind this phrase? The answer is simple and at the same time frightening. Our main enemy, accelerating the arrival of old age, is routine, the daily repetition of the same actions, thoughts, and routes. Bekhtereva called this life in a stereotypical situation. Imagine a person who stands at a conveyor belt day after day, performing one monotonous movement, or an office worker shuffling the same papers. And after work, the sofa and mindless television watching. In such moments, as the academician explained, we walk along the same trodden neural paths. The brain, like muscles, works on the principle of energy saving. Why create new paths if you can use old ones, honed to automatism? On the one hand, it is convenient, but on the other, it is a direct path to fading. When the brain does not receive a new, complex and non-standard load, it sends a terrible signal to the entire body system. I am no longer developing. My work is coming to an end. This is that very underloading. And the merciless matrix perceives this signal as a command to action, launching an accelerated aging process. This leads not only to problems with memory, thinking, and attention. It strikes at all physical health. But how can one compensate for this destructive underloading? What tasks force our brain to work at full power? In search of an answer, Bekhtereva and her colleagues from the Institute of the Human Brain conducted an elegant experiment. Scientists tried to find out exactly what mental activity has the most beneficial effect on the entire organism. Perhaps solving complex mathematical equations or solving crosswords. The results were astounding. The greatest effect was given not by mechanical, but by creative work. The participants in the experiment were given a seemingly simple homework assignment. They were offered a set of random, unrelated words from which they had to invent and compose a coherent story. Such a task forced their brain to stage a real revolution. To fulfill it, they had to activate practically all areas of the cortex. Those responsible for memory, those governing logic, the centers responsible for decision-making, and even for the emotional coloring of these decisions. The brain literally flared up with activity. This creative work did not just create new neural connections, it regulated metabolic processes throughout the body. This is the first rule. Force your brain to create, not just to consume information, but to create something new from it. But Bekhtereva knew that even the most brilliant and active brain is only half the victory. There was a second, no less important rule, without which the battle would still be lost. The first rule seemed to hand humanity an almost almighty tool. Creative brainwork, capable of rewriting code and reversing destructive processes, looked like a panacea. But observing the world around her, especially her fellow scientists, Natalia Bekhtereva came to a disturbing and disappointing conclusion. Among representatives of intellectual labour, there were indeed many long livers. Their minds remained sharp and clear until deep old age. But at what cost? Bekhtereva saw lively, brilliant minds locked in fragile, worn-out bodies suffering from ailments. It was a Pyrrhic victory. Yes, they prolonged the work of their consciousness, but their physical shell lost the battle. This discovery posed a new fundamental question to her. Why does this happen? Why does the brilliant brain, this supreme commander-in-chief of the entire organism, allow its army, the body, to fall into complete decay? The answer Bekhtereva arrived at was the second revelation, the second part of the cipher to a long and, most importantly, full life. Intellectual work alone was catastrophically insufficient. The brain can do much, but it is not omnipotent. And then she revealed to the world her most vivid and merciless comparison, which put everything in its place. Compare a city where people live, infrastructure operates, lights burn, and an abandoned village where a few old people remain, living out their days. So, the brain of a person who does not solve complex creative tasks is that very abandoned village. But what happens if the brain works, but the body remains inactive? The image becomes even scarier. It is a city with only one single functioning building, the City Hall, where officials, neurons, continue to generate brilliant ideas. But outside the windows of this City Hall is a dead, crumbling city. Roads, vessels are broken. Houses, muscles and organs decay and collapse. Communications, nerve connections with the body, are severed. In such a city there is no future. It is doomed. This was the second rule. To live long and happily, it is necessary to devote time daily not only to mental labour, but also to physical exertion. These are not just tips for staying in shape. It is a vital necessity for maintaining the connection between the City Hall and the city. Bekhtereva's research and her institute visibly confirmed this. It turned out that just 20 minutes of daily physical activity favourably affect the neuroplasticity of the brain, no less than solving puzzles. Movement forces the body to send billions of signals to the brain. It nourishes it, forces those parts of it responsible for coordination, balance, and control to work. An active body is the best simulator for the brain. The best option, as Bekhtereva said, is to learn from childhood to think and play tennis at the same time. Only in this way, combining physical and mental activity, can one win a complete victory over the fading program. And so, the two parts of the puzzle fold into a single picture. Two simple rules, at first glance, turn out to be not just useful tips, but two keys to one door, the door to a long, meaningful, and prosperous life. The greatest legacy of Natalia Bekhtereva lies not in the fact that she discovered a ruthless program embedded in us by nature. Her main gift to humanity is the proof that one can and must fight this program. We are not sentenced. Our departure is not a fatal inevitability, but rather a default script that we are capable of rewriting. The first weapon in this fight is a creative, restless mind. A brain that does not just exist, but creates, produces the new, solves non-standard tasks. This is our internal hacker, capable of bypassing system bans, laying new neural paths, where the program prescribed desolation. It is a signal we send to the very depths of our being. I am here, I am developing, I am needed. This is what prevents our internal city from turning into an abandoned village. The second weapon is an active, living body. It is not just a vessel for a brilliant mind, but its faithful ally and partner. Physical activity is that language which both the brain and the body understand equally well. It is a life-giving stream of signals that nourishes neurons, strengthens connections, and proves that the city hall manages not a ghost town, but a thriving metropolis. One without the other is always a defeat. A brilliant mind in a feeble body is a tragedy, and a healthy body with a fading mind is nonsense. Thus, Natalia Bekhtereva came to her main conviction. To live a long and full life, both rules must be observed. Life is a struggle, and she gave us the most perfect shield and the sharpest sword, creative intelligence and physical activity. Her history is not just the biography of a great scientist. It is a manifesto of the human spirit refusing to submit to the blind laws of biology. It is proof that the most complex computer in the universe, our brain, can be tuned, and the main programmer is us. What choice will you make today? Will you walk along another trodden path, saving energy for a slow withering? Or will you force your brain to flare up, creating something new while your body feels the joy of movement? What signal will you send to your internal matrix? A signal to execute the sentence, or a signal that you are continuing the fight? The answer to this question decides something more than just well-being. It determines the very trajectory and duration of your path. This is the great and slightly frightening responsibility that Natalia Bekhtereva gave us. Thank you for watching this video to the end. The ideas of Natalia Petrovna Bekhtereva are not just scientific theories, but a key to understanding the incredible possibilities hidden in each of us. If her wisdom and boldness of thought resonated in your soul, please support our channel, like this video, so as not to miss new episodes dedicated to the great mysteries of the brain and the legacy of this outstanding scientist. Subscribe to the channel, Wisdom of Natalia Bekhtereva, and be sure to click on the bell. This way, you will be the first to know about the release of a new video and receive your portion of knowledge for a long and meaningful life. Take care of yourself and your brain. Until next time.